Hello and welcome back to Inside the Wave with one of your co-hosts, Isaac Popper, here to do a second emergency podcast. We did one not too long ago, me and John Burrows talking about Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, and San Diego State making a move to the Pac, the two teams that started the realignment process post Pac-12 raid were Washington State and Oregon State. I'm going to call that phase one, as those two signed the agreement with the Mountain West for scheduling for the next 2 years to play some games with the Mountain West. We've got phase two with these four schools coming over, very under the radar, under the hood. And then phase three, Utah State is now what we have. Why Utah State? Well, that's because Tulane is staying in the American Conference, as is Memphis, North Texas, UTSA, and Charlotte, Temple, Wichita, FAU, Rice, all also committed to staying in the American Conference last night, and really yesterday, actually. So let's dive into it. As a quick reminder, the main thing that a lot of people are concerned about, big time college football fans, as we know, football drives college sports, whether I agree with it or not. This is the reality. So the top 5 conference champions get spots in the college football playoff under the current agreement. There's a look-in for a possible redistribution after 2027. So what does that mean? Well, there's clearly 4 conferences that are better than all the rest, and then there's one spot for the best of the rest. The big question has been, does Pac, adding more than 2 schools, become the best of the rest or not? And ultimately, Memphis, Tulane, UTSA, South Florida, to an extent, think that wouldn't necessarily be the case. And so they have decided, given the financials, to stay put in the American Conference. Currently, there's no plans, according to the Big Four, Power Four conference commissioners, to add a 6th conference championship automatic qualifier, but we'll see what happens in 2027. The American Conference got the New York 6 spot, so there used to be a group of 5 team in the New York 6 Bowls, which was 12 teams, just like the playoff, 6 years in a row until last year with Liberty, where, in my opinion, SMU got totally screwed. And I know that some of those teams for the American that got the New York 6 spot, like Cincinnati, UCF, are no longer in the conference, but Tulane still got one, Memphis got one, and those schools that are staying in the American Conference have gotten a bid to a New Year's 6 Bowl more recently than any of the schools that are moving to the Pac-12, unless Liberty moves to the Pac-12. But I don't see that happening. And those schools, Washington State and Oregon State, also haven't made it super recently, the college football or the New Year's 6 Bowl games. So what happened over the last 10 days, week, recently? Well, Navigate, a firm the Pac-12 has hired, which considers themselves a data-driven consulting firm, up my alley, has been using a spreadsheet that is a little bit unknown to potential partners of the Pac-12. They are leading the media rights deal hunt, as well as helping the Pac-12 find and select new teams and schools to move over to their conference. Dan Wolken, a reporter who has done a great job covering this all realignment, said that Oregon State and Washington State are not valued much more highly than Memphis, who's not valued so much more than Utah State, according to Navigate's calculations, which is really interesting. A lot of people expected Tulane and Memphis to be, and to an extent, South Florida to be valued much higher than any of the other schools that they were looking at. In my iPops tiers, I even had Utah State in the 4th tier with Memphis, Tulane, and UTSA in the first tier. The only reason I left out South Florida from that first tier was because of geography. They have a great radio station. They pour a lot of money into athletics, and it's a well-run organization. Also a much better academic school than pretty much every American Conference team besides Tulane and Rice. But we'll get into academics a little bit later, so stay tuned for that. Dan Wolken and Navigate are also saying that Utah State and whatever other team that the Pac-12 is going to make an offer to potentially could bring in about the same amount of revenue in a TV deal as Memphis or Tulane, which is surprising for Tulane fans, I'm sure. Few in college sports currently believe that the theoretical $12 million per member payday from a new TV deal is realistic. I'm not sure if that's realistic or not. I don't think we really know enough. I don't think some of these TV companies or media giants even know themselves at this point. Turner is still sorting out things as they just lost out on the NBA package. So they're going to clearly open up probably around 5 to 7 million from what I'm seeing, at least some money per year that they could use to potentially purchase a new sport, dive into a new area, depending on what they want to use. So they could definitely make an offer at the Pac-12 or whatever new conference emerges, given that space in their shelf after losing the NBA. And they also could be using HBO Max with that as well. The two that I'm really looking at, in addition to the CW, which is the current partner of the Pac-12, is Amazon and then Apple. So these are two companies that have really just started to get into sports over the last 5 or so years, maybe a little bit longer, last decade for the most part. Apple TV has been pretty successful for the MLS. They have a league-wide media rights package with MLS, pretty exclusive. The games are on Apple TV Plus. And then Amazon has been streaming Thursday Night Football, and they're starting to get into some other spaces as well in the sports sphere. So Tulane had some deliberation to do. They spent days thinking it over. Maybe it was going to happen. Maybe it wasn't. I know that there was a board meeting that's really no secret at this point that lasted 2 days. And they realized that this, quite honestly, was a really bad offer for Tulane, and maybe even insulting by some. So what did that deal look like? Well, the Pac-12 was offering a $2.5 million exit fee compensation, supposedly. According to Pete Thamel, our friend over at ESPN, who reported on our Fear the Wave report about Darian Mensah getting the starting job. He reported that the exit fee for the American Conference was $27.5 million, which is preposterous. $18 million was the price tag for Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston only a few years ago. And then SMU paid $25 million to leave the conference just last year and leave it abruptly. Thamel reported that it was $27.5 million for Tulane, Memphis, UTSA, South Florida, Rice, North Texas, whoever wants to leave, which is a very high exit fee. So essentially, we're really playing an expensive game of musical chairs between the American Conference, Pac-12, Mountain West, etc. Keep an eye on potential mergers for either of those two conferences with the Pac. And then this is also different from what's in the AAC bylaws. The American Conference bylaws say that you can spend 27 months of waiting at a cost of $10 million. So if you give 27 months notice before you leave the conference, then the exit fee would be $10 million to leave, which is much better than the $27.5 million reportedly that the American Conference is asking for. And then the Pac only offered $2.5 million out of the $27.5 to cover, which is less than 10%. Very surprising. I thought maybe Tulane and Memphis could get maybe even the whole the whole exit fee covered. I also did not expect the exit fee to be as high as SMU. I thought they really paid a premium to leave immediately and chase the ACC with money. And then $10 to $15 million in annual revenue is what the PAC projects. But again, a lot of experts are not really believing that that money would actually come through. That's the TV deal, as well as additional money from bowl games, college football playoff, etc., NCAA tournament appearances. And then supposedly the deal had a 5-year grant of rights that would run through 2030 to 31. We talked a little bit about the grant of rights on the last podcast, but essentially it's near impossible to leave before those grant of rights are up. That's what we're seeing play out in court with Florida State and Clemson suing, Florida State specifically suing the ACC. So at the moment, it does not look like that is bendable. And then if Tulane accepted this deal, they'd be locked into the PAC until 2031, which I think would be okay. There's still a chance for you to move to the ACC if that's the goal in 2031, based on that 5-year grant of rights. But ultimately, Tulane decided this is a bad financial deal. It's a bad business decision. Let's stay where we are. The American Conference is actually better than this PAC. So why would we leave to go to the PAC if we have all these assets in the American Conference? After UTSA, Memphis, Tulane, and South Florida issued a joint statement, and then all the teams followed suit, committing to the American Conference. The Mountain West was the topic of the day. They were trying to get teams to commit to them through a signing bonus, a more secure commitment than the American Conference, because they were having a tiered wealth distribution. So Air Force, if they signed this commitment, would receive $10 million, which is a lot in just a signing bonus. But that was under the constipulation that they had 8 members. And currently, with Utah State leaving, the PAC's at 7, and now the Mountain West is at 7. So a little bit of a game of chicken, but the Mountain West is going to incur about $55 million in poaching fees, potentially, and penalties. So there's currently a lawsuit that is going on today between the Mountain West and the PAC after they already had that scheduling agreement and made a deal not to really poach each other, or really the PAC not to poach the Mountain West. UNLV is another school to watch. They have been long a favorite to move to the PAC, and behind my first tier of American Conference schools in USF, UNLV was in my tier 2 as the top team that the PAC should consider. If I was Teresa Gould, the next schools I'd look at were UNLV and New Mexico. So UNLV is in a weird situation because Las Vegas and then University of Nevada, Reno are tied through a system of higher education board of regents. And then the UNLV, or the governor of the Board of Regents for the system of higher education in Las Vegas, is a UNLV grad, but the Reno president is a respected 2-time governor of Nevada. So it might be difficult for Nevada to break free from UNLV. And the question is, does the PAC want to add UNLV if Nevada comes with it? I talked in the last podcast about why I think UNLV is a desirable school, great basketball culture and history with players in the NBA, excellent football team right now, and quite honestly, probably the front runners. In fact, I did see that one outlet gave them the highest odds to make the college football playoff out of the group of 5 schools. Boise State's probably the front runner at the moment, but they play a current PAC school in Washington State this week and have a really, really tough schedule this year in the Mountain West. And then great facilities as well. Really enjoyed my time over at UNLV's campus for Summer League and Sports Business Classroom this summer. Going back to my tiers really quickly, if it's not UNLV or New Mexico, now that the American Conference schools are off the table, the big four that announced their commitment together, my tier 3 included Air Force, who's still up in the air. They could go Pac, stay in the Mountain West, or even do football only or all sports potentially. We'll see what happens with the American Conference. North Texas, who also just committed to stay, but not with the big four. And then Rice for academic purposes, especially if they want to regain Stanford and Cal when the ACC grant of rights is up. And then San Jose State, who is not great in basketball, but does have a good football team at the moment. And then my tier 4 was Utah State, Wyoming, Nevada, the rest of the Mountain West. And then some wild cards, Liberty, App State, and I'm going to add James Madison and Texas State as well. And then for basketball, Gonzaga and St. Mary's. So focusing on the American Conference, we're 15 minutes in already. Thank you for listening and sticking with me if you are still listening. The American Conference is clearly the right decision for Tulane. And not only did Tulane decide this, because I know I'm speaking to a lot of Tulane fans right now, as that's our primary audience, but Memphis decided that this was not a good deal for them either, and they've been vocally desperate to leave the American Conference, or not even necessarily just leave the American Conference, but just join a power conference in general. South Florida agreed. They're a school with a lot of money, great facilities, well run right now. They also all think that it was best to just stay in the American Conference. Wasn't a great deal. You would have had to pay $25 million in exit fees. There's an unknown TV deal, and so many more reasons that the American Conference is better. Specifically, in addition to the financials, my big thing is travel. These Olympic sport athletes, and I've talked to them this week, last week, a lot of them, there's definitely a lot of concerns about the travel. If a swimmer is swimming in the Pac-12 at Tulane, I would be willing to bet that they're probably going to be on an overnight flight. They're already having to face a lot of delays, commercial overnight flights sometimes if a flight gets canceled. And what do you think happens when they go play a California school on a Sunday morning? Well, they're flying back, especially with the time difference. It's one of those flights where you leave around midnight, you gain 2 hours, you land at like 6 a.m. It's really 4 in the morning. Is that fun? No. And I would feel really bad for a lot of our Olympic athletes, the volleyball players as well, if they're going to have to go over and have that travel schedule. It's not bad for football because if you're on a plane, you're on a plane. I get Corvallis is far. They did it for the baseball tournament, but do you really want to be sending a lot of your teams over there into some of these really not central locations where you're going to have to send charter planes and find connections for all these flights? I just don't think it's fun. And then the American Conference has a great deal, and it doesn't end soon. I know some people have been saying, oh, well, there's an unknown when the American Conference's ESPN deal is up. Well, sure, but it runs through 2030, 2032. So we've got 8 more years of this incredible ESPN contract. It was a 12-year, $1 billion TV deal signed to start in 2020, 2021, which happened to be the first season following the COVID-19 pandemic, and runs through 2031-32. The American Conference schools were set to get $6.94 million a year, which was much, much better, about $5 million better than the original deal that the American Conference had before this, which was 7 years, $126 million. That was known to be well under market value. Now they have a deal at market value with ESPN Plus, increasing jobs, giving student workers incredible opportunities to work on high-level broadcasts, and just being able to provide a platform now that we don't need shelving space and we can do streaming for all the women's volleyball matches, all the women's basketball games. Every men's basketball game is on ESPN right now for conference play at the very least, and home games as well for non-conference. They're all at least on ESPN Plus, if not on national TV, football as well, obviously. There's some tennis matches, men's and women's, on it as well. I was fortunate to broadcast one of the women's tennis matches on ESPN Plus last year. Some of our conference opponents are broadcasting sports that we don't have, like lacrosse, men's and women's soccer, softball as well. And then all our baseball games are on ESPN too. The path to the college football playoff is still a great path. If you win all your games, you're in. I don't see how an undefeated Tulane or even a one-loss Tulane in the current American Conference is with their non-conference schedule. And I'm serious about a one-loss team with their non-conference schedule. Next year, Duke, Northwestern, Ole Miss coming up. 0 losses or 1 loss, you're in the college football playoff. So take care of business, and we don't even have to debate what conference we should be in. No grant of rights in the American Conference. This has been a big debate. Clemson, Florida State might be kicking themselves at signing that grant of rights. Maybe some of the other ACC schools. Maybe even Cal and Stanford, who already regret moving over to the ACC from the Pac and wish they stayed in the Pac. So having no grant of rights in the American Conference, if Tulane decides there's an opportunity to leave next year, 2 years, 3 years, there's still that opportunity, and they could do that. Not taking this Pac deal does not mean that they are in the American Conference forever. They committed to the American Conference for now, but that doesn't mean you're still here in 7, 8 years. The American Conference is exploring avenues like private equity, which really intrigues me. Commissioner Tim Pernetti, who is going to be at Tulane's game on Saturday for South Florida and who was at Tulane's game at Oklahoma, said that he, in the conference, is exploring avenues for revenue enhancement, new distribution models, further expansion of league footprint. Very excited to see what's to come for this conference. They have a leader in Tim Pernetti who has experience on the media side as well as the business side with schools. He brings a lot of great experience, and I'm excited to see where he goes with this. There's been a lot of buzz about private equity maybe being the future. If the American Conference can pull that off, it would be great to be in this conference. And then branding, resources, academic support, you name it. I personally am not a fan of the U.S. News and World College Report because I don't think that it fairly evaluates schools. Like, how is Georgia ahead of Tulane? That's just ridiculous. It values state schools too much, too highly. But if you do want to go by those metrics, because what other benchmark do we have for academics? The American Conference is better than the Pac-7. The Pac-7's average is nowhere near the Autonomous 4 right now. Its average rating is 189 using the mean, and the American Conference is 159 with 12 schools, and that's including Wichita, who bogs us down and doesn't play football, and then not including Army and Navy, who are in the football conference. So if you look at it for football, it's much better than the Pac. And actually, if you take out Memphis, Tulane, and UTSA, who were in my tier 1 of schools and 3 of the 4 teams that the American Conference was considering, the rating actually improves to 150. Compare that to the 189 for the Pac-7. So if you move those 3 schools, it'd be like 150 to 195. The American Conference clearly has better academics. And I don't like this rating, but I think that those academics are not necessarily that close. So if you made it this far, which hopefully you all did, I was very impressed by the last podcast and show where we had over 80 comments, over 75 likes, 4,500 views. I really appreciate the engagement. It was fun to see what everyone thought, who the Pac-2 or Pac-6 at the time thought that they should add to the conference. And now I'm still curious, without the American Conference teams, who should the Pac add? But focusing on Tulane and where we're at, we've made our decision. There's no reason to cry over spilled milk and go back to complaining about this. It is clear Tulane made the right decision. They knew it was the right decision. We're in the American Conference. So let's see the excitement about the American Conference. This is iPop Stats for Fear the Waves, Inside the Wave. Thank you so much. Make sure to like and subscribe and check out all our player interviews and our upcoming game recap. I was over in Lafayette last Saturday to see Tulane win 41-33 over the Raging Cajuns, and I'll be on the sidelines again this Saturday for South Florida, so make sure to catch our game preview. Roll Wave.